The dust cloud billowed up from beneath Mariah Norwood's boots as she fled down the main street of Redemption Creek, tears blurring her vision. The whispers had become shouts, the rumors now accusations that followed her like vultures circling a carcass. She clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders as if it could somehow shield her from the cruel words being hurled at her back. "Thief," someone called out. "Harlot," yelled another. Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1878, was not kind to women with tarnished reputations, especially schoolteachers entrusted with the town's children. As the new teacher who had arrived just 3 months prior, Mariah had been fighting an uphill battle from the start, but never had she imagined it would come to this public humiliation based on nothing but lies. She ducked into the narrow alley between the general store and the blacksmith's, pressing her back against the rough wooden wall, trying to catch her breath. Her chestnut hair had come loose from its pins, falling in wild tendrils around her flushed face. At 24, Mariah had thought she'd left trouble behind in Boston. How wrong she'd been. "Miss Norwood." The voice was deep, steady like the mountains that surrounded the valley town. Mariah startled, hastily wiping tears from her cheeks. "Mr. Daniels," she acknowledged, recognizing the tall figure blocking the alley's entrance. The sun at his back cast his face in shadow, but there was no mistaking Owen Daniels' broad shoulders or the distinctive tilt of his cowboy hat. Owen stepped forward, concern etched across his weathered features. At 30, he'd seen his share of injustice on the frontier, but the sight of the schoolteacher's tear-stained face stirred something within him he couldn't quite name. "I heard the commotion," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Judge Crawford's wife is spreading tales again," Mariah nodded, fighting to regain her composure. "She's telling everyone I stole money from the school fund, and worse, that I've been entertaining men in my quarters after dark." Her voice cracked. "It's not true, Mr. Daniels. None of it." Owen's jaw tightened. As the owner of the Double Circle Ranch just outside town, he held considerable influence in Redemption Creek, though he rarely wielded it. He preferred the company of horses and open skies to town politics and gossip. But this was different. "I believe you," he said simply, 3 simple words, yet they landed like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. "Why?" Mariah asked, genuinely baffled. "You hardly know me." Owen shifted his weight, his spurs making a soft, jingling sound against the packed dirt. "I know enough. I've seen how you are with the children, even my foreman's boy who couldn't read a word before you came. I've watched you give your own lunch to that Miller girl when she had none." He paused. "A person who does those things isn't what they're saying." Mariah felt fresh tears threatening. Kindness was so unexpected it nearly undid her. "Thank you, but words won't stop what's happening. The school board is meeting this afternoon. They'll ask for my resignation or worse." "Then I'll be there," Owen said with quiet determination. "You don't need to involve yourself in my troubles." "Maybe I want to." The words hung between them, carrying more weight than either was ready to acknowledge. The school board meeting was held in the town hall, a building that doubled as a church on Sundays. By 3 o'clock, it seemed half the town had squeezed inside, hungry for drama. Judge Crawford sat at the head of the long table, his wife Victoria positioned strategically in the front row of spectators, her face a mask of righteous indignation. Mariah sat alone at one end of the table, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. She changed into her best dress, a navy blue cotton with white lace at the collar, modest and dignified, though she suspected nothing would sway minds already made up against her. Judge Crawford rapped his gavel. "This emergency meeting of the Redemption Creek School Board will come to order. We are gathered to address serious allegations concerning the conduct of Miss Mariah Norwood." The door at the back of the room opened, and all heads turned. Owen Daniels stepped in, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. He nodded politely to those he passed as he made his way to the front, stopping directly behind Mariah's chair. "Mr. Daniels," Judge Crawford acknowledged with a frown, "this is a closed meeting. As one of the largest taxpayers in this county, I believe I have a right to attend discussions about how our school is run," Owen replied evenly. The judge looked like he wanted to object but thought better of it. "Very well. Please take a seat." "I'll stand," Owen replied, placing a hand on the back of Mariah's chair, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield at her back. Victoria Crawford rose from her seat, her elaborate hat bobbing with indignation. "Judge, I must insist we proceed. I have witnessed with my own eyes Miss Norwood entertaining a man in her quarters behind the schoolhouse well after dark." Her voice carried perfectly through the room. "A teacher must be above reproach in all matters, especially moral ones." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mariah's face burned with humiliation, but she kept her chin up. "That would be concerning," Owen spoke up, "if it were true." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Are you calling me a liar, Mr. Daniels?" "I'm saying the man you saw was Dr. Whitaker, who was kind enough to make a house call when Miss Norwood came down with fever last week. I know because I fetched him myself when I saw the schoolhouse dark that morning." Owen's voice remained calm. "As for the missing funds, I believe Sheriff Taylor has already determined they were mistakenly recorded by the previous treasurer." The sheriff, a lean man with a salt and pepper mustache, cleared his throat from his position along the wall. "That's correct. Bookkeeping error. No theft occurred." Victoria spluttered, but Judge Crawford cut her off with a raised hand. "Mrs. Crawford, is it possible you were mistaken in what you witnessed?" "I know what I saw," she insisted, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. "Then perhaps you saw Dr. Whitaker, as Mr. Daniels suggests," the judge said carefully, clearly unwilling to directly contradict his wife, but seeing the way the wind was blowing. Owen stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Miss Norwood came to our town with excellent credentials and has proven herself a dedicated teacher. Our children are thriving under her care." He scanned the faces around the table. "I stand with Miss Norwood. Her honor stands with me." The room fell silent. In the Wild West, a man's word was his bond, and Owen Daniels was known for his integrity. If he vouched for someone, people listened. Judge Crawford cleared his throat. "In light of these clarifications, I see no reason to continue this inquiry. Miss Norwood, the board apologizes for any distress this matter may have caused. You are, of course, welcome to remain in your position." The meeting adjourned quickly after that, with people filing out, some looking disappointed at the lack of scandal, others clearly relieved. Victoria Crawford swept out without looking back, her husband following with an apologetic backward glance. Mariah remained seated, stunned by the sudden reversal of her fortunes. When the room had emptied except for Owen, she finally turned to him. "Why did you do that?" she asked softly. Owen considered her question, his blue eyes serious beneath the brim of his hat. "Because it was the right thing to do. You risked making enemies." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I've weathered worse storms than Victoria Crawford's displeasure. Still." Mariah stood, smoothing her skirts. "I'm in your debt, Mr. Daniels." "Owen," he corrected gently. "And there's no debt between neighbors who help each other." He hesitated. "Though I would be honored if you'd join me for supper at the hotel restaurant this evening, to celebrate your vindication." Mariah knew she should refuse. Being seen dining with a bachelor would only give the gossips fresh ammunition. But looking into Owen's earnest face, she couldn't bring herself to say no. "I'd like that," she said instead, surprising herself with her boldness. Thank you. As they stepped out into the late afternoon sunlight, Mariah felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Perhaps Redemption Creek could live up to its name after all. The Golden Eagle Hotel's restaurant was the finest establishment in Redemption Creek, which wasn't saying much by Eastern standards, but represented the height of local luxury. Crystal lamps cast a warm glow over linen-covered tables, and a piano player in the corner provided soft background music. Mariah felt every eye on her as Owen escorted her to a table by the window. Her lavender dress, her only other good outfit besides the navy blue, suddenly seemed inadequate for such an occasion. "Everyone's staring," she whispered as Owen held her chair. "Let them," he replied, taking his own seat across from her. "Maybe they'll learn something about dignity." The waiter approached, a young man who kept darting nervous glances between them. "Good evening, Mr. Daniels, Miss Norwood. Our special tonight is roast beef with potatoes." "That sounds excellent," Owen said. "For both of us, if that suits you, Miss Norwood." Mariah nodded, grateful not to have to make another decision after such a taxing day. When the waiter departed, an awkward silence descended. Mariah realized she knew very little about the man sitting across from her, despite his dramatic intervention on her behalf. "I haven't properly thanked you," she began. Owen waved away her words. "You already did. Let's speak of pleasanter things." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me what brought you all the way from Boston to our humble town." Mariah hesitated. Her reasons for leaving the East were complicated and painful, yet something in Owen's direct gaze made her want to be honest. "My father died last year," she said. "He was a professor at Harvard. We lived modestly but comfortably on his salary. When he passed, I discovered he had debts I knew nothing about. I sold everything to pay them and found myself without home or prospects." She traced the pattern on the tablecloth. "Teaching was all I knew, and the advertisement for a position here seemed providential." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The West offers fresh starts to many." "And you?" Mariah asked. "Have you always been in Wyoming?" A smile creased the corners of his eyes. "No, though sometimes it feels that way. I came from Pennsylvania after the war, fought for the Union, came back to find my family's farm struggling. My uncle had settled out here, wrote about the opportunities for a man willing to work hard." His expression grew distant. "He died before I arrived. Left me his claim, just a shack and a few head of cattle then. And now the Double Circle is the largest ranch in the county," Mariah observed. "That's quite an achievement." "Luck and stubbornness," Owen replied with characteristic modesty, "and good men working alongside me." Their food arrived, temporarily halting conversation. Mariah was surprised to find herself genuinely hungry, the stress of the day having burned away earlier appetite. The roast beef was tender, the potatoes perfectly seasoned with rosemary. "This is wonderful," she said after a few bites. "I usually just make do with soup or bread and cheese in my quarters. The cook here was trained in San Francisco," Owen explained. "Redemption Creek has its small refinements." As they ate, conversation flowed more easily. Owen told stories of ranch life, the spring calving, breaking horses, the camaraderie of the bunkhouse. Mariah spoke of her students, their progress and personalities, the challenges of teaching children of different ages and backgrounds in one room. "Bobby Jenkins finally learned his multiplication tables," she said with pride. "I was beginning to think it impossible." "That boy's as stubborn as his father," Owen chuckled. "You must have the patience of a saint." "Hardly," Mariah smiled. "But I do believe every child can learn if you find the right approach." By the time they finished their apple pie and coffee, Mariah realized the restaurant had nearly emptied. She'd been so engaged in conversation, she hadn't noticed the passing time or the diminishing stares from other diners. "I should get you home," Owen said, signaling for the bill. "You have school tomorrow." The reminder of reality dampened Mariah's spirits. "Yes, though I'm not certain what reception awaits me." "You'll hold your head high," Owen said firmly, "and if anyone gives you trouble, they'll answer to me." The declaration should have sounded presumptuous, but instead, Mariah found it comforting. "Thank you for tonight. It was unexpected." Owen paid the bill despite her protests, then offered his arm as they stepped into the cool evening air. The stars stretched across the Wyoming sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet, more brilliant than anything Mariah had seen in Boston. "It's beautiful," she breathed, pausing to look up. Owen followed her gaze. "One of the things I love most about this country. The sky seems endless." They walked slowly toward the schoolhouse, where Mariah's small attached quarters waited. The streets were quiet, most of the town having retired for the night. "May I ask you something, Miss Norwood?" Owen said after they'd walked in companionable silence for a time. "Of course." "And please call me Mariah." "Mariah," he repeated, as if testing the sound of her name. "Why did you never defend yourself against the rumors? Before today, I mean." She considered the question carefully. "I thought my work would speak for itself. That truth would prevail without my having to proclaim it." A rueful smile curved her lips. "Perhaps that was naive." "Not naive," Owen countered. "Dignified. But sometimes dignity alone isn't enough in a place like this. Sometimes you need allies." They had reached the schoolhouse, a simple wooden structure with a bell tower and a small addition at the back that served as Mariah's living quarters. "Well," she said, suddenly shy, "thank you again for everything." Owen removed his hat, holding it before him. "It was my pleasure, truly." He hesitated. "Mariah, I'd like to call on you again if you'd permit it." Her heart fluttered traitorously. "That would be nice. But wouldn't it give the gossips more to talk about? Let them talk." Owen's voice was firm. "I'm more concerned with what you think than what they say." Mariah found herself smiling. "Then yes, I'd like that very much." "Sunday afternoon," he suggested. "I could take you riding, show you some of the country beyond town." "I'd like that," she replied, though the prospect of riding also made her nervous. It had been years since she'd been on a horse. Owen seemed to read her thoughts. "I have a gentle mare who'd suit you perfectly." "Then it's settled." Mariah fumbled with her key, suddenly aware of how close he stood, the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. "Good night, Mariah," Owen said softly, and for a breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took her hand and pressed it gently before releasing it. "Sleep well." "Good night, Owen," she replied, watching as he replaced his hat and turned to go, his tall figure soon disappearing into the darkness. Mariah entered her quarters, lighting the lamp and leaning against the closed door. Her heart was beating too fast, her thoughts in turmoil. She had come to Redemption Creek to teach, to rebuild her life after loss, not to fall under the spell of a handsome rancher with kind eyes. Yet as she prepared for bed, she found herself wondering what Sunday might bring, and for the first time in many months, looking forward to what lay ahead rather than dreading it. The next morning, Mariah awoke before dawn, her stomach knotted with anxiety about facing her students and their parents after yesterday's public spectacle. She dressed carefully in her most professional attire, a high-necked gray dress with black trim, her hair pinned severely back. To her surprise, Mrs. Miller was waiting outside the schoolhouse when she arrived, little Emma Miller clutching her mother's skirts. "Miss Norwood," the woman began hesitantly, "I wanted to apologize for believing those awful things they said about you. Emma told me how you've been helping her with her reading after school, and well, I should have known better." Mariah was touched by the unexpected apology. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. That means a great deal to me." "Emma made these for you." Mrs. Miller nudged her daughter forward. The child held out a small bunch of wildflowers tied with yarn. "They're beautiful," Mariah said, genuinely moved as she accepted them. "Thank you, Emma." As the school day began, more parents lingered than usual, several offering awkward but sincere words of support. By the time the last student had filed in, and Mariah rang the bell to start lessons, her spirits had lifted considerably. The day passed in a blur of arithmetic, geography, and spelling. If the children were aware of yesterday's drama, they showed no sign of it, except perhaps being on their best behavior. Even Bobby Jenkins completed his sums without complaint. After dismissing the class, Mariah was erasing the chalkboard when a knock came at the open door. She turned to find Sheriff Taylor standing there, hat in hand. "Miss Norwood, hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" The lawman cleared his throat. "I wanted to apologize for not speaking up sooner about that business with the school funds. I'd already verified it was just an accounting error last week, but confronting Judge Crawford's wife is a delicate matter." Mariah finished for him. The sheriff nodded, looking relieved. "Politics in a small town are complicated. Still, I should have set the record straight before it came to a public hearing." "Well, all's well that ends well," Mariah said graciously, though part of her wanted to point out how much humiliation could have been avoided. "Indeed." The sheriff fidgeted with his hat brim. "Also wanted to say that Owen Daniels is a good man. Known him since he first rode into town with nothing but a horse and determination. If he's taken an interest in your situation, you couldn't ask for a better ally." Mariah felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Daniels has been very kind." "That he has." The sheriff replaced his hat. "Good day to you, Miss Norwood." After he left, Mariah arranged the wildflowers in a jar on her desk, smiling at how quickly the town's sentiment seemed to be shifting. The cynical part of her wondered if Owen's influence was responsible for this sudden change, but she pushed the thought aside. Better to accept goodwill at face value than question its origins. That evening, she was grading papers when another knock came, this one on her private quarters door. Opening it cautiously, she was surprised to find Agnes Peterson, the owner of the town's millinery shop. "Miss Norwood, forgive the intrusion," the older woman said. "I've brought you some fresh bread and preserves. My way of saying I'm sorry for believing those nasty rumors." "That's very kind, Mrs. Peterson," Mariah said, accepting the basket. "Not kind at all, just right." Agnes peered at her with shrewd eyes. "You know, I saw you dining with Owen Daniels last night." Mariah tensed, waiting for the disapproval. "About time that man showed interest in someone," Agnes continued unexpectedly. "Been alone too long. Makes a fine-looking couple, you two do." "Oh, we're not," Mariah began. Agnes waved away her protest. "Time will tell. Just wanted to say there are plenty in town who'd be pleased to see Owen settle down with someone worthwhile." She patted Mariah's arm. "Don't let Victoria Crawford's jealousy put you off. That woman's been trying to marry her niece to Owen for years, but he won't give her the time of day." With that cryptic statement, Agnes bid her good night, leaving Mariah standing in her doorway, basket in hand, with more questions than answers. Sunday couldn't come quickly enough. The remaining days of the school week passed without incident, and if Mariah caught herself watching the road for signs of Owen, well, that was her private business. When Sunday finally arrived, bringing clear skies and gentle breezes, she dressed in her one riding outfit, a practical divided skirt in dark blue that she'd had made before leaving Boston, anticipating the need for practical clothing in Wyoming. At precisely 2 o'clock, hoofbeats announced Owen's arrival. Mariah stepped outside to find him leading 2 horses, his own chestnut gelding and a dappled gray mare with a white blaze. "Right on time," she said by way of greeting. Owen smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "A promise is a promise. This is Pepper," he added, nodding to the mare. "Gentlest horse on the double circle." Mariah approached the mare cautiously, holding out her hand. Pepper snuffled it, then nudged her shoulder affectionately. "She likes you," Owen observed. "Ready to mount up." With his assistance, Mariah was soon settled in the saddle, adjusting to the feeling after so many years. Owen checked her stirrups, his hands businesslike but gentle as they brushed against her boots. "How does that feel?" he asked, looking up at her. "Strange but familiar," Mariah admitted. "Like remembering a language I once knew. It'll come back to you." Owen swung effortlessly onto his own horse. "We'll take it easy." They rode out of town at a walk, drawing curious glances from Sunday strollers. Mariah sat as straight as she could, determined not to give anyone reason to criticize her horsemanship or propriety. Once past the town limits, the landscape opened up dramatically. Rolling grasslands stretched toward distant mountains, the spring green giving way to the first wildflowers of the season. Owen led them along a well-worn trail that followed a meandering creek. "This is beautiful," Mariah said, relaxing into Pepper's steady rhythm. "I've been so focused on the schoolhouse, I've hardly seen any of the surrounding country." "That's a shame," Owen replied. "There's no better place on earth than Wyoming in spring." As they rode, Owen pointed out landmarks and wildlife: a hawk circling overhead, deer tracks in the soft earth, the distant blue smudge of mountains where snow still lingered on the peaks. Mariah drank it all in, captivated by his evident love for the land. After an hour's gentle ride, they came to a small clearing beside the creek, shaded by cottonwood trees. Owen dismounted and came around to help Mariah down. His hands spanned her waist, lifting her effortlessly from the saddle. For a moment they stood very close, his hands still at her waist, her own resting lightly on his shoulders. Then, seeming to recollect himself, Owen stepped back. "I thought we might rest here a while," he said, his voice a touch rougher than usual. "I brought some refreshments." From his saddlebags, he produced a small feast: cold chicken, bread, cheese, and 2 apples, along with a canteen of cool water. He spread his coat on the grass for Mariah to sit upon, despite her protestations that it would get dirty. "That's what washing is for," he said simply. They ate in companionable silence, listening to the creek's gentle babble and the rustle of leaves overhead. Mariah felt more relaxed than she had in months, perhaps years. There was something about Owen's presence that put her at ease, despite the confusing new feelings he stirred in her. "Tell me more about Boston," Owen said eventually. "Do you miss it?" Mariah considered the question as she watched a butterfly alight on a nearby wildflower. "I miss certain things. The libraries, the concerts, the bustling streets, but Boston after my father died was lonely." She met his gaze. "I'm finding there are different kinds of riches here." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The West isn't easy, but it's honest. What you see is what you get, for the most part." "Except when it isn't," Mariah countered, thinking of the rumors that had nearly cost her position. "People are people everywhere," Owen conceded. "But out here, a person's true character tends to reveal itself sooner rather than later. The land doesn't allow for much pretense." "Is that why you came here? To escape pretense?" A shadow crossed Owen's face. "Partly. The war changed many things for many people. When I came home, Pennsylvania didn't feel like home anymore." He picked up a stone and skipped it across the creek's surface. "Out here, I could build something new, something that was mine alone." "And you have," Mariah said softly. "The double circle is impressive. from what I've heard." Owen shrugged, but she could tell he was pleased by her words. "It's a good spread, growing every year. Started with just 20 head of cattle and a broken-down cabin. Now we run over 2,000 head and employ 15 men year-round." "You must be very proud." "I am," he admitted, "though it's a lonely sort of achievement sometimes." The admission hung between them, fragile and honest. Mariah felt a tug of connection, recognizing her own solitude in his words. "I understand that," she said quietly. "Teaching can be the same way, rewarding but solitary." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of a kindred spirit. Owen reached out slowly, his hand covering hers where it rested on the coat between them. "Mariah," he began, then seemed at a loss for words. "Yes," she prompted, heart hammering against her ribs. Before he could continue, the thunder of approaching hooves broke the moment. Owen was on his feet instantly, hand dropping to the revolver at his hip as he positioned himself between Mariah and the potential threat. A moment later, one of his ranch hands burst into the clearing, his horse lathered with sweat. "Mr. Daniels." The young man exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. "Been looking everywhere for you, sir. There's trouble at the ranch. Fire broke out in the south pasture. Men are fighting it, but it's moving fast with this wind." Owen's expression hardened. "Anyone hurt?" "No, sir, not yet. But Rodriguez says if it jumps the creek, we could lose the whole summer grazing land." "I'll come right away." Owen turned to Mariah, regret clear in his eyes. "I'm sorry, but I have to go." "Of course," she said, already gathering up their picnic things. "Don't worry about me. I can ride back to town." Owen hesitated, clearly torn between duty and courtesy. "Go," Mariah insisted. "I'll be fine. Pepper knows the way, I'm sure." After another moment's indecision, Owen nodded. "Stay on the main trail. You'll be back in town within the hour." He took her hand, pressing it briefly. "I'll call on you when I can." With that, he was gone, mounting his horse in one fluid motion and galloping after his ranch hand, leaving Mariah to make her way back alone. The return journey was uneventful, Pepper indeed seeming to know the route without guidance. As Mariah rode, she reflected on the afternoon, the beauty of the landscape, the easy conversation, and that moment of connection before they were interrupted. Something was growing between them, something that both thrilled and frightened her, a teacher and a rancher, a Boston intellectual and a Wyoming frontiersman. On the surface, they had little in common. Yet there was understanding between them, a mutual respect that felt like the foundation of something potentially profound. As she approached town, Mariah straightened her posture and lifted her chin. Let them talk if they must. For once, the gossip might be about something wonderful beginning, rather than malicious lies. The fire at the Double Circle Ranch took 3 days to fully extinguish. Mariah heard updates from parents of her students, learning that Owen and his men had fought day and night to save their grazing lands. By Wednesday, word came that they'd finally succeeded, though at great cost in exhaustion and burned acreage. That evening, as Mariah was preparing a simple supper, a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Owen standing there, hat in hand. He looked utterly spent, face smudged with soot, eyes red-rimmed from smoke and lack of sleep, clothes disheveled. "Owen," she exclaimed. "Come in, please." He stepped inside but remained standing just beyond the threshold, as if afraid of soiling her quarters. "I apologize for my appearance. I wanted to explain about Sunday." "There's nothing to explain," Mariah assured him, taking his hat and placing it on a hook by the door. "I've heard about the fire. Is everyone all right?" "All men accounted for, though Peterson got some bad burns on his hands." Owen ran a hand through his hair, which was matted with sweat and ash. Lost about 500 acres of grazing land, but it could have been much worse. You must be exhausted. Have you eaten? Mariah gestured to her small table where her own supper of bean soup and cornbread awaited. I was just about to eat. There's plenty. Owen shook his head. I couldn't impose, it's not an imposition, Mariah interrupted firmly. Please, sit down before you fall down. Too tired to argue, Owen sank into the chair she indicated. Mariah quickly set another place and ladled a generous portion of soup into a bowl for him. As she placed it before him, their fingers brushed, sending a jolt of awareness through her despite his disheveled state. Thank you, he said simply, the gratitude in his eyes speaking volumes. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Owen too hungry and tired for conversation, Mariah content to provide this simple comfort. I'm sorry about our ride, he said finally, after finishing his soup and accepting a second helping. I had plans to show you the valley beyond the creek. It's especially beautiful this time of year. There will be other opportunities, Mariah replied. The important thing is that you and your men are safe. Owen studied her face across the small table, his expression softening. You're an extraordinary woman, Mariah Norwood. She felt herself blush under his direct gaze. Hardly. I'm just practical. It's more than that. Owen broke off a piece of cornbread. Most women of my acquaintance would be upset about a spoiled outing, not concerned about ranch hands they've never met. Well, I'm not most women, Mariah said with a small smile. For better or worse. Definitely for better. Owen's voice was quiet but certain. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Owen yawned, unable to suppress his exhaustion any longer. You need rest, Mariah said gently, not conversation. You're right, as usual. Owen pushed back from the table. I should go. Thank you for the meal, best I've had in days. You're welcome anytime, she replied, meaning it more than she had intended to reveal. At the door, Owen paused. Would you permit me to call on you again this Sunday? A proper visit this time without interruptions, I promise. I'd like that very much. His smile, despite his fatigue, was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Until Sunday, then. After he left, Mariah stood at the window, watching his tall figure move down the darkened street toward the livery stable where he'd presumably left his horse. She pressed a hand to her heart, feeling it racing beneath her fingers. This was dangerous territory, she knew. A schoolteacher was expected to maintain certain standards, and becoming romantically involved would be scrutinized by the town, especially after the recent scandal. Yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Owen Daniels, a pull that went beyond gratitude or physical attraction. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet strength that complemented her own more scholarly nature. When he looked at her, she felt seen not as a proper Boston lady or a frontier schoolmarm, but as herself, with all her complexities and contradictions. Sunday couldn't come soon enough. The days passed slowly, filled with lessons and grading and the routine of school life. By Saturday, excitement and nervousness had Mariah cleaning her small quarters thoroughly, and even splurging on a new ribbon for her hair at Agnes Peterson's shop. Special occasion tomorrow. Agnes asked with a knowing smile as she wrapped the pale blue ribbon. Just freshening up for spring, Mariah replied non-committally. Hum. Agnes didn't look convinced. Well, that shade brings out your eyes beautifully. I'm sure Mr. Daniels will think so too. Mariah didn't bother denying it. Sunday dawned bright and clear. Mariah dressed with care in her best day dress, a patterned calico in shades of blue and cream, and arranged her hair with the new ribbon. At precisely 2 o'clock, Owen arrived, looking much recovered from his exhausted state earlier in the week. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance as well, wearing a clean white shirt under a well-cut brown vest, his boots polished to a shine. "You look beautiful," he said simply as she opened the door. "Thank you," Mariah replied, flustered by his directness. "You look well rested." Owen smiled. "Amazing what a few nights of proper sleep can do." He offered his arm. "I thought we might walk to the bluff overlooking the town. The view is spectacular, and the wildflowers are at their peak." The walk took them through town, and then up a gentle slope that rose to the east. Owen was solicitous, offering his hand at steeper sections, though careful to maintain propriety where they might be observed. As they climbed higher, the town fell away below them, the buildings becoming toy-like in the distance. "It's like looking at a map," Mariah observed, catching her breath at the top of the bluff. The entire valley spread before them, Redemption Creek at its center, surrounded by farms and rangelands with mountains framing the horizon. "I come up here sometimes to think," Owen said, standing beside her. "Helps put problems in perspective when you can see how small they are in the grand scheme of things." Mariah nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "It's humbling." Owen had brought a small bundle, which he now unfolded to reveal a blanket. He spread it on a flat area dotted with wildflowers, then produced a small package from his pocket. "I'm not much for picnics," he admitted as Mariah settled onto the blanket. "But Mrs. Henry at the hotel was kind enough to pack some cookies for us." "Perfect," Mariah said, touched by his thoughtfulness. They sat side by side, looking out over the valley, shoulders almost but not quite touching. Owen offered her a cookie, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Mariah," he said after they had sat in companionable silence for a while. "There's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. "Yes. I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my interest in you." Owen looked down at his hands. "The truth is, I noticed you the first Sunday you attended church after arriving in town. You were sitting 3 rows ahead of me, and when you joined in the hymn, your voice was so clear and true it made me forget the words I was supposed to be singing." Mariah stared at him, surprised. "That was months ago." Owen nodded. "I'm not a man who acts hastily, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. I watched you from a distance, saw how you treated the children, how you carried yourself with dignity despite being a stranger in town." His voice grew softer. "By the time those rumors started, I already knew they couldn't be true, because I'd seen your character in 100 small ways." "Why didn't you say anything before?" Mariah asked, both moved and confused by his confession. "I wasn't sure I had anything to offer a woman like you," Owen admitted. "You're educated, cultured. I'm just a rancher who learned most of what he knows from hard experience." "That's not how I see you at all," Mariah protested. "You've built something remarkable here through intelligence and determination. That's worth far more than book learning." Owen's eyes met hers, hope kindling in their blue depths. "Then you don't find my attention unwelcome." "Quite the opposite," Mariah said softly. "I've thought of little else since you stood up for me at that meeting." A smile spread slowly across Owen's face, transforming it from handsome to breathtaking. "In that case, Miss Norwood, I'd like to formally ask your permission to court you." The old-fashioned phrase made Mariah smile. "I would like that very much, Mr. Daniels." Owen reached for her hand, enfolding it in his much larger one. "I can't offer the refinements of Boston, but I promise to respect you, support your teaching, and do everything in my power to make you happy." "Those are the only things that matter," Mariah replied, her heart so full it felt it might burst. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Owen leaned toward her. His lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it was almost reverent, a promise rather than a demand. Mariah closed her eyes, savoring the moment, the warmth of his hand still holding hers, the faint scent of soap and leather that she'd come to associate with him. When they parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers for a moment. "I've wanted to do that since I found you crying in that alley." "I'm glad you waited," Mariah replied with a small laugh. "I was in no state to appreciate it then." They spent the afternoon on that bluff, talking of their pasts and their hopes for the future, sharing stories and dreams as the sun began its western descent. When shadows lengthened, Owen reluctantly suggested they start back. "I don't want to compromise your reputation by returning after dark," he explained. Mariah nodded, appreciating his consideration. As a teacher, she was held to strict standards of behavior, and while their courtship was nothing to be ashamed of, appearances mattered in a small town. They walked back hand in hand until they reached the edge of town, where Owen released her with obvious reluctance. By unspoken agreement, they maintained a proper distance as they made their way through the streets, though the glances they exchanged held the warmth of their earlier intimacy. At her door, Owen took her hand again. "May I see you next Sunday?" "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," Mariah replied. "Perhaps dinner at the hotel on Wednesday as well," he suggested. "I'll be in town for a meeting with the cattle buyers." "I'd like that." Owen hesitated, then raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Mariah." "Good night, Owen." As she watched him walk away, Mariah felt as though she were standing at the threshold of a new life, one filled with possibilities she had never imagined when she boarded that train in Boston, running from debt and heartache. Perhaps Redemption Creek had been aptly named after all. The weeks that followed took on a pattern that brought joy to Mariah's days. Owen called on her every Sunday without fail, taking her on rides through the countryside, picnics by the creek, or simply walking through town, letting everyone see that his intentions were serious and honorable. On Wednesdays, they dined at the hotel restaurant, their regular table by the window becoming a fixture of town life. Victoria Crawford still sniffed disapprovingly when they passed, but her opinion seemed to matter less and less as others in town embraced the courtship between the respected rancher and the schoolteacher. Agnes Peterson took particular delight in their relationship, often finding excuses to provide Mariah with ribbons or lace, at cost, for special occasions. As spring gave way to early summer, Mariah found herself falling deeply in love with Owen. It wasn't just his handsome face or strong hands that attracted her, but his integrity, his quiet intelligence, and the tenderness he showed her when no one was looking. Their conversations ranged from books to cattle breeding, from politics to childhood memories, each revelation binding them closer together. One Wednesday evening in late June, after their usual dinner at the hotel, Owen suggested a walk by the creek that ran along the edge of town. "It's a beautiful night," he observed as they strolled along the bank, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. "Too beautiful to end so early." Mariah agreed, content to extend their time together. The creek burbled peacefully beside them, fireflies beginning to wink in the tall grass along its banks. "School ends for the summer next week," she remarked. "The children are already more interested in swimming holes than spelling." "Can't blame them," Owen chuckled. "Though I expect you'll miss them." "I will," Mariah admitted, "though I have some projects planned, reorganizing the school library, preparing new lessons for fall." Owen stopped walking, turning to face her. In the fading light, his expression was difficult to read, but there was an intensity to his gaze that made Mariah's heart beat faster. "I've been thinking," he began, taking both her hands in his. "The summer might be a good time for changes." "What kind of changes?" Mariah asked, a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. Owen drew a deep breath. "Mariah Norwood, These past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light and learning and laughter into my days in ways I never imagined possible." He squeezed her hands gently. "I love you, more than I have words to express." "I love you too," Mariah whispered, the words coming easily, naturally. Owen's smile was brief but radiant before his expression turned serious again. "Then would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Though she had begun to hope for this moment, the reality of it still took Mariah's breath away. "Owen, are you certain? A rancher's wife, it's a hard life, so different from teaching." "Who says you can't do both?" Owen countered. "The double circle is only 5 miles from town. You could continue teaching if that's what you want, or we could build a school at the ranch for the Hands children and any others nearby." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I don't want to change who you are, Mariah. I fell in love with the teacher as much as the woman." Tears pricked at Mariah's eyes, moved by his understanding of what mattered to her. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen's face lit with joy. He pulled her close, lifting her off her feet in an exuberant embrace before setting her down and kissing her with a passion that left her dizzy. "I have something for you," he said when they finally broke apart. Reaching into his vest pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. "It's not fancy, but it was my mother's." From the pouch, he tipped a ring into his palm, a simple gold band with a single small diamond that caught the last light of day. "It's perfect," Mariah breathed as he slipped it onto her finger. They walked back to town hand in hand, both too happy for many words. At her door, Owen kissed her again, this time with a promise of their future together in the tender press of his lips. "I'll speak to Reverend Thomas tomorrow," he said. "How soon can I make you Mrs. Daniels?" Mariah laughed at his eagerness. "The school term ends next Friday, perhaps a summer wedding. It would give us time to prepare properly. 3 weeks from Saturday," Owen suggested. "July 15th, that sounds perfect." As she watched him stride away, Mariah touched the ring on her finger, still hardly believing the turn her life had taken. From near ruin in Boston to finding love in Wyoming territory, it seemed like something from a novel rather than real life. Yet it was real: the ring, the man, the promise of a future together. For the first time since her father's death, Mariah felt truly hopeful, truly home. News of their engagement spread through Redemption Creek like wildfire. By noon the next day, Mariah had received congratulations from almost every parent and shopkeeper in town. Her students were equally delighted, especially when she assured them she would return as their teacher in the fall. "But you'll be Mrs. Daniels," exclaimed Sally Thompson, a bright 9-year-old with braids. "Won't you live at the big ranch?" "I will," Mariah confirmed. "But Mr. Daniels has promised to bring me to school each day." This announcement was met with approval, particularly from Bobby Jenkins. "Mr. Daniels has the fastest horses in the county," he declared with authority. "You'll never be late." The wedding preparations began in earnest. Agnes Peterson insisted on making Mariah's dress as her gift, ordering special white silk from Denver for the occasion. The ladies of the church formed a quilting circle to create a wedding quilt, each square representing their wishes for the couple's happiness. Owen, meanwhile, threw himself into preparations at the ranch, enlarging the master bedroom of his house and adding a small study where Mariah could prepare her lessons and keep her books. He rode into town every other day, sometimes just for an hour to see her, bringing wildflowers or small gifts, a hair comb, a book of poetry, once even a kitten he'd rescued from a barn loft. "The house needs a mouser," he explained as the tiny calico purred in Mariah's arms. "And I thought you might like the company." "She's wonderful," Mariah said, touched by his thoughtfulness. She named the kitten Pepper after the mare she'd ridden on their first outing together. 2 weeks before the wedding, as Mariah was having a final fitting for her dress at Agnes's shop, Victoria Crawford entered with her niece, Eliza, a pretty blonde girl of 20 who had arrived from St. Louis earlier that month. "Miss Norwood," Victoria acknowledged stiffly. "I understand congratulations are in order." "Thank you, Mrs. Crawford," Mariah replied politely, though she noticed the older woman's eyes narrow at the sight of her in white silk. "This is my niece, Eliza Harper," Victoria continued. "She'll be staying through the summer." Mariah nodded to the young woman, who returned the greeting with a shy smile. "Welcome to Redemption Creek, Miss Harper." "Thank you," Eliza replied. "Aunt Victoria has told me so much about the town." "No doubt," Agnes muttered under her breath as she pinned the hem of Mariah's dress. Victoria's gaze swept critically over the wedding gown. "How charming!" Though perhaps a bit elaborate for a frontier wedding. Before Mariah could respond, Agnes straightened, pins in hand. "Nothing is too elaborate for the marriage of our town's schoolteacher to our most successful rancher, Victoria. Some of us believe in celebrating love, not just advantageous connections." Victoria's face flushed. "Come, Eliza," she said sharply. "We'll return when the shop is less occupied." After they left, Agnes clicked her tongue. "That woman never gives up, bringing her niece here right before your wedding, as if Owen would look twice at anyone else with you in his life." "What do you mean?" Mariah asked, puzzled. Agnes sighed. "Victoria's been trying to match Owen with suitable young ladies for years, first her younger sister, then cousins, now this niece. She considers herself a kingmaker in these parts, and it galls her that Owen chose his own bride without her influence." "I had no idea," Mariah said, troubled by this information. "Don't give it another thought," Agnes advised, resuming her pinning. "Owen's made his choice clear to everyone. Victoria's just making one last attempt to save face." Mariah nodded, but the encounter left her uneasy. Until now, she'd attributed Victoria's animosity to simple dislike, or perhaps lingering embarrassment over the false accusations. Learning there might be deeper motivations made her wonder what else the woman might do. That evening, when Owen called, Mariah mentioned the encounter casually, curious about his reaction. "Victoria Crawford and her matchmaking," he said with a rueful shake of his head. "She's been parading eligible women before me since I bought the Henderson property 5 years ago. Seems to think the wife of the judge should determine all important matches in the county." "And this niece?" Mariah couldn't help asking. "Have you met her before?" Owen smiled, seeing through her attempted nonchalance. "Jealous Miss Norwood, curious," she corrected primly. He laughed and pulled her close. "I've never met the girl before and have no interest in doing so. My heart is spoken for, completely and irrevocably." His kiss banished her remaining doubts, but the incident served as a reminder that their path to happiness might still face obstacles. Victoria Crawford was not a woman to cross lightly, and she clearly considered Owen's marriage to Mariah an affront to her social authority. The week before the wedding brought a flurry of activity. Owen's sister, Elizabeth, arrived from Pennsylvania with her husband and 2 children, eager to meet the woman who had captured her brother's heart. Elizabeth was a robust, cheerful woman with Owen's blue eyes and direct manner, and she embraced Mariah warmly. "I've waited years for Owen to find someone worthy of him," she declared. "When his letters started mentioning you, I knew it was serious. He's never written so eloquently about anyone or anything, except maybe his horses." Mariah laughed. "I'll take that as a high compliment." "The highest," Elizabeth assured her. "Now tell me everything about how you met. Owen's letters were detailed, but a man's perspective is never quite complete." As the wedding day approached, Mariah divided her time between closing the school for summer, finalizing wedding details, and preparing for her move to the ranch. Owen had offered to hire help for the packing, but Mariah preferred to handle her books and personal items herself. 3 days before the wedding, Mariah was at the schoolhouse late, organizing teaching materials she wanted to take to the ranch. The summer evening was warm, and she'd left the windows open to catch the breeze. Absorbed in her task, she didn't notice the approaching footsteps until someone cleared their throat from the doorway. Looking up, she was surprised to see Judge Crawford standing there, hat in hand. "Judge Crawford," she acknowledged, rising from her desk. "Can I help you with something?" The judge looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Miss Norwood, I've come on a matter of some delicacy." He glanced around as if ensuring they were alone. "It concerns your upcoming marriage." A prickle of unease ran down Mariah's spine. "What about it?" "I feel obligated to inform you that there are concerns being raised about your suitability as Owen Daniels' wife." The judge's voice was formal, almost rehearsed. "Certain information has come to light regarding your departure from Boston." Mariah stiffened. "What information?" "A telegram arrived yesterday from a Mr. Harrington of the Boston School Committee. It suggests you were dismissed from your teaching position there, under a cloud of impropriety, specifically an inappropriate relationship with a married school administrator." The accusation hit Mariah like a physical blow. "That is absolutely false," she said, her voice steady despite her shock. "I resigned my position voluntarily after my father's death." Judge Crawford looked skeptical. "The telegram is quite specific, Miss Norwood." "Mr. Harrington claims to have documentation." "Then his documentation is fabricated," Mariah replied, anger beginning to replace shock. "Who requested this information, Judge Crawford? Was it your wife?" The judge had the grace to look embarrassed. "The inquiry was made through official channels, in the interest of protecting a prominent citizen from potential scandal." "You mean protecting Owen from me," Mariah translated, "based on lies and innuendo. These are serious allegations, Miss Norwood. As a friend of Owen's father, I feel obligated to ensure he's not making a mistake." The judge placed his hat back on his head. "I suggest you consider your position carefully. A quiet departure might be best for all concerned, rather than subjecting yourself and Owen to public scrutiny of your past." After he left, Mariah sat heavily at her desk, mind racing. The accusation was absurd. She had never been involved with anyone at her Boston school, let alone a married administrator. But she knew how such rumors worked, how they could destroy reputations whether true or not. This had Victoria Crawford's fingerprints all over it. Having failed to discredit Mariah in Redemption Creek, she was now reaching into her past, fabricating scandals where none existed. The timing was no coincidence. 3 days before the wedding, when preparations were too far advanced to easily cancel, but with enough time for doubts to spread through the town. Mariah's first instinct was to go directly to Owen, to tell him everything before he heard it from someone else. But it was late, and he was at the ranch overseeing final preparations there. The news would keep until morning, or so she thought. The next day dawned clear and bright, a perfect Wyoming summer morning. Mariah rose early, determined to find Owen and clear up this misunderstanding before it could fester. She dressed quickly and headed toward the livery stable, intending to hire a buggy to take her to the double circle. As she crossed the town square, she noticed a small crowd gathered outside the sheriff's office. Owen's sister Elizabeth stood at the edge of the group, her expression troubled. "Elizabeth," Mariah called, hurrying toward her. "What's happening?" "Oh, Mariah," Elizabeth turned, relief washing over her face. I was just coming to find you. There's been trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Before Elizabeth could answer, the crowd parted and Owen emerged from the sheriff's office, his expression thunderous. Seeing Mariah, he stopped short. "Owen," she started forward, but the look on his face halted her steps. It wasn't anger she saw there, but hurt, deep, betrayed hurt that pierced her heart. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low but carrying in the sudden silence that had fallen over the onlookers. "Is what true?" Mariah asked, though she already knew what he must have heard. "About Boston, about why you really left." Owen's hands clenched at his sides. "About the married man." "No," Mariah said firmly. "It's absolutely false. I came here because my father died and I lost our home to his debts. There was never anyone else, married or otherwise." Owen searched her face, wanting to believe her. "Judge Crawford received a telegram based on lies," Mariah interrupted. "Victoria Crawford has been trying to prevent our marriage from the moment you proposed. Don't you see? This is just her latest attempt." A murmur ran through the crowd. Owen's jaw tightened. "This isn't the place for this conversation," he said, taking her elbow and guiding her away from the curious onlookers. They walked in tense silence until they reached the small park at the edge of town, where a bench beneath an old cottonwood tree offered some privacy. "Tell me everything," Owen said as they sat, leaving a careful distance between them. Mariah took a deep breath. "Judge Crawford came to the schoolhouse last night. He said they'd received information from Boston claiming I was dismissed for having an affair with a married administrator. It's completely false. I've never been involved with anyone at my school, married or not." "Then why would someone send such a telegram?" "Because Victoria wants to stop our wedding," Mariah said, frustration coloring her voice. "She's been trying to match you with her relatives for years, according to Agnes. When the rumors about the school funds failed, she dug deeper." Owen frowned. "I want to believe you, Mariah, but this telegram came from the Boston School Committee. It's an official communication." "From a Mr. Harrington, yes." When Owen nodded, Mariah continued, "There is no Mr. Harrington on the Boston School Committee. I would know. My father served with them for 15 years. Someone is using a false name to give credibility to a lie." Hope flickered in Owen's eyes, but doubt still lingered. "Why go to such lengths?" "Ask yourself who benefits from breaking our engagement," Mariah said quietly. "Who has consistently opposed me from the moment I arrived in town? Who has a niece of marriageable age visiting just in time for our wedding to fall apart?" Owen was silent for a long moment, processing her words. "Victoria does seem to have a personal vendetta against you." "It started with the school funds and accusations about entertaining men after dark," Mariah reminded him. "Accusations you yourself disproved. This is just more of the same, but reaching further back where it's harder to verify." "I could telegraph Boston myself," Owen suggested. "Ask for confirmation from the actual school committee." "That would take days," Mariah pointed out. "Our wedding is in 3 days. Victoria knows that. By the time you receive a response clearing my name, the damage will be done." Owen took her hands in his touch gentle despite the tension in his frame. "Mariah, look me in the eyes and tell me there's no truth to these accusations." Mariah met his gaze steadily. "There is no truth to them, Owen. I have never been involved with a married man or anyone at my school. I left Boston because after my father died, I discovered he had debts I couldn't pay. I sold our home and possessions to satisfy his creditors and came west for a fresh start. That's the whole truth." Owen studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you." Relief washed through Mariah, followed quickly by gratitude. "Thank you. But believing you and proving your innocence to the town are 2 different matters," Owen continued, his brow furrowed. Victoria has planted seeds of doubt that will be difficult to uproot quickly. What do you suggest we do? Owen thought for a moment. We proceed with our wedding as planned. I won't let lies and manipulation dictate our future. But the rumors, let them talk, Owen said firmly. In time, the truth will become apparent. And in the meantime, anyone who matters knows your true character. His faith in her brought tears to Mariah's eyes. I don't want to damage your standing in the community. My standing? Owen's laugh held little humor. Mariah, I'm more concerned about protecting you from further attacks. Victoria and her allies won't stop just because we're married. If anything, they may escalate their efforts. Then we face them together, Mariah said, finding strength in his unwavering support. The truth is on our side. Owen squeezed her hands. There's one more thing I think we should do. What's that? Make a public statement. Now today, before the rumors spread further. His blue eyes held a determined gleam. I won't let them humiliate you with lies. Not again. By noon, word had spread that Owen Daniels had called for a town gathering in front of the church. Curious townsfolk began assembling, speculation running rampant about the purpose of the meeting. Had the wedding been canceled? Was there some announcement about the ranch? No one seemed to know for certain. Judge and Victoria Crawford arrived early, securing a prominent position near the church steps. Victoria looked smugly satisfied, clearly believing her scheme had succeeded. Her niece Eliza stood beside her, looking uncomfortable with the situation. Owen and Mariah approached together, his hand at the small of her back in a clear gesture of support. They mounted the steps and turned to face the gathered crowd. Mariah spotted Agnes Peterson giving her an encouraging nod, while Elizabeth and her family stood resolute at the front of the crowd. Thank you all for coming, Owen began, his voice carrying easily across the square. I know there have been rumors circulating this morning, and I wanted to address them directly. He paused, scanning the faces before him. Some of you may have heard allegations about Miss Norwood's past in Boston, allegations suggesting impropriety that would make her unsuitable as a teacher or as my wife. A murmur ran through the crowd. Victoria Crawford's smile widened slightly. These allegations are false, Owen continued, his voice hardening. They are malicious fabrications designed to damage Miss Norwood's reputation and prevent our marriage. Judge Crawford stepped forward. The telegram came from a reputable source, a source that doesn't exist. Owen cut him off. There is no Mr. Harrington on the Boston School Committee. I confirmed this with Sheriff Taylor, who telegraphed Boston directly this morning. The sheriff nodded from his position near the back of the crowd. Received the reply not 30 minutes ago. No Harrington has served on that committee in over 20 years. Victoria's smug expression faltered. Judge Crawford looked uncomfortable, glancing at his wife with dawning suspicion. Furthermore, Owen continued, Sheriff Taylor's inquiry revealed that Miss Norwood resigned her position honorably after her father's death, with the full support and regret of her colleagues. There was never any suggestion of impropriety. Now all eyes turned to Victoria Crawford, whose face had gone pale with fury and embarrassment. This is not the first attempt to discredit Miss Norwood with false accusations, Owen said, his voice growing stronger. And I suspect it won't be the last. But I want to make something perfectly clear to everyone in Redemption Creek today. He took Mariah's hand, drawing her closer to his side. This woman, this intelligent, honorable, compassionate woman will be my wife in 3 days' time. Her reputation stands unblemished in my eyes and in the eyes of anyone who has taken the time to know her true character. Her honor stands with me and mine with her, now and always. The simple, powerful declaration hung in the air for a moment before Agnes Peterson began to applaud, quickly joined by Elizabeth, and then, one by one, most of the townsfolk. Even some who had been swayed by the rumors seemed moved by Owen's unwavering support. Victoria Crawford grabbed her niece's arm and pulled her away, retreating from the crowd with as much dignity as she could muster. Judge Crawford hesitated, then followed, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the crowd began to disperse, many came forward to offer support and apologies for having doubted Mariah. The affirmation was welcome, but Mariah found her attention fixed on the man beside her, whose steadfast belief had never wavered. "Thank you," she said quietly when they were finally alone on the church steps, "for believing in me without question." Owen cupped her face in his hands. "I know who you are, Mariah Norwood. No rumor or telegram could change that knowledge." He smiled, the tension of the morning finally easing from his features. "Besides, I meant what I said. Your honor stands with me and mine with you. That's what marriage is, facing the world together, standing firm when storms come." "I like the sound of that," Mariah said, leaning into his touch. "Good," Owen replied. "Because in 3 days it becomes our reality, for better or worse, but always together." The wedding took place as planned on July 15, 1878, a golden summer day that seemed designed for celebration. The church was filled to capacity, with even late-coming well-wishers crowding the doorway to witness the union of Owen Daniels and Mariah Norwood. Notably absent were Judge and Victoria Crawford, who had departed suddenly for Denver the day after the town meeting, citing urgent business. Few believed this explanation, but their absence was more relief than disappointment to the bridal couple. Mariah wore Agnes Peterson's masterpiece, a gown of white silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, simple yet elegant. As she walked down the aisle on Sheriff Taylor's arm, the sheriff having offered to stand in for her father, her eyes were fixed on Owen, waiting at the altar in a new black suit, his face alight with love and pride. Reverend Thomas spoke of commitment and partnership, of weathering storms together and building a life founded on mutual respect and love. When Owen and Mariah exchanged their vows, their voices were clear and unwavering, each word a promise they intended to keep through whatever challenges lay ahead. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the Reverend declared, and as Owen kissed his bride, the church erupted in applause and cheers. The reception that followed at the hotel was the social event of the season. Tables groaned with food contributed by townspeople and ranchers alike, roasted beef from the Double Circle, pies and cakes from every kitchen in town, wine specially ordered from Denver. The hotel's dining room had been cleared for dancing, and Owen led Mariah in the first waltz, his usual reserve melting away in the joy of the moment. "Mrs. Daniels," he murmured as they moved across the floor. "I think I'll never tire of saying that." "I'll never tire of hearing it," Mariah replied, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such happiness. Later, as the celebration continued, Eliza Harper approached them somewhat hesitantly. She had returned from Denver alone the previous evening, explaining to anyone who would listen that she had no intention of supporting her aunt's schemes. "Mr. and Mrs. Daniels," she greeted them, "I wanted to offer my congratulations and my sincere apologies for my aunt's behavior. I had no idea what she was planning when she invited me here." "You have nothing to apologize for, Miss Harper," Mariah assured her. "You weren't responsible for your aunt's actions." "Still, I'm ashamed to be associated with such deceit," Eliza said earnestly. "I wanted you to know that I think you make a wonderful couple and I wish you every happiness." "That's very kind of you," Owen said, inclining his head, "and you're welcome in our home anytime, regardless of your aunt standing with us." Eliza's relief was palpable. "Thank you." That means a great deal." She hesitated, then added, "I'll be staying in Redemption Creek for a while. Aunt Victoria and I had words after your town meeting. I've taken a position helping Dr. Whittaker with his records and correspondence." "A fine opportunity," Mariah said warmly. "Dr. Whittaker is a good man." As Eliza moved on, Owen pulled Mariah closer. "That was generous of you, considering all her aunt put you through." "The girl didn't choose her relatives," Mariah replied, "and she had the courage to stand apart from them when it mattered. That deserves recognition, not punishment." Owen's eyes filled with admiration. "You continue to amaze me with your capacity for forgiveness." "Not forgiveness," Mariah corrected gently. "Understanding. There's a difference." The celebration continued until sunset, when Owen and Mariah slipped away to begin the journey to the Double Circle Ranch, now their home together. As the buggy crested the hill overlooking the valley, Owen drew the horses to a halt, wanting Mariah to see the ranch in the golden light of evening. Below them stretched the Double Circle, the main house with its wide porch and new addition, the bunkhouse where the ranch hands lived, barns and corrals where horses moved in the fading light. Beyond, cattle grazed on rolling grasslands that extended to the distant mountains, now purple in the sunset. "It's beautiful," Mariah said softly. "More beautiful than I remembered." "It's yours now, too," Owen replied. "Our home, our life together." As they continued down the hill, ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse to cheer their arrival, throwing hats in the air and firing guns skyward in celebration of their boss's marriage. Owen helped Mariah from the buggy, and together they walked up the steps of the house that would be their home. On the porch, Owen paused. "Welcome home, Mrs. Daniels." Then, with a swift movement that made Mariah laugh in surprise, he swept her into his arms and carried her across the threshold. Their wedding night was everything Mariah had both anticipated and feared: tender, passionate, at times awkward, but ultimately a profound communion of two people who had found in each other not just desire but understanding, respect, and deep abiding love. In Owen's arms, Mariah discovered aspects of herself she had never known existed, and in her responsiveness, Owen found a completeness he had never thought to experience. As they lay together in the quiet darkness afterward, Mariah's head pillowed on Owen's shoulder, she marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "That life takes unexpected turns," Mariah replied. "A year ago, I was packing up my father's books in Boston, wondering how I would survive. And now, she raised her head to look into his eyes. "And now I'm exactly where I'm meant to be with exactly who I'm meant to be with." Owen smiled, pulling her closer. "That makes two of us, Mrs. Daniels. That makes two of us." 1 year later, July 1879, Mariah sat on the porch of the Double Circle Ranch house, a ledger open on her lap, but her attention drawn to the scene before her. Owen was in the corral, working with a young colt, his movements patient and precise as he accustomed the animal to the saddle. She never tired of watching him work with horses. There was a special kind of magic in the way they responded to him, a communication that went beyond words. The past year had brought changes both expected and surprising. Mariah had continued teaching at the Redemption Creek School through the fall and winter, riding in with Owen each morning and returning each afternoon. But as spring approached, she had made the decision to step back temporarily. For the best of reasons, her hand drifted to her swollen belly, feeling the strong kick of the child that would join their family in just a few more weeks. The pregnancy had been relatively easy, though the combination of teaching and ranch life had proven more exhausting as the months progressed. Instead, Mariah had thrown herself into a new project establishing a small school right at the double circle for the children of ranch hands and neighboring homesteads. Owen had converted an unused storage building into a cheerful one-room schoolhouse, complete with desks, a blackboard, and bookshelves Mariah had filled with volumes ordered from Denver and back east. She would begin teaching there in the fall, with their baby at her side, a compromise that allowed her to continue her vocation while remaining close to home and child. Already 5 students were enrolled, with more expected as word spread. The sound of hoofbeats drew Mariah's attention to the lane leading to the ranch. A buggy approached, and she recognized Elizabeth's distinctive wave. Owen's sister had relocated to Wyoming shortly after their wedding, her husband having purchased land adjacent to the double circle. The families had grown even closer over the past year, with Elizabeth providing valuable advice and support as Mariah adjusted to ranch life and pregnancy. "There's my favorite teacher," Elizabeth called as she drew the buggy to a halt. She climbed down with practiced ease, a basket over her arm. "I've brought that blackberry preserve you were craving." "You're a saint," Mariah replied, struggling to rise with her ungainly form. "Stay put," Elizabeth instructed, mounting the porch steps and setting her basket down. "How are you feeling today?" "Like I'm carrying a future bronc rider," Mariah said with a laugh as the baby delivered another enthusiastic kick. "Never still, this one." Elizabeth patted her belly affectionately. "Just like his father, or her mother for that matter, neither of you knows how to remain idle." Owen, having spotted his sister's arrival, secured the colt and made his way to the porch, removing his gloves and hat as he approached. "Lizzie," he greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. "To what do we owe the pleasure? Can a sister visit without an ulterior motive?" Elizabeth asked innocently. At Owen's skeptical look, she laughed. "Fine, I admit it. I brought news along with the preserves. Victoria Crawford is returning to Redemption Creek." Mariah and Owen exchanged glances. After the wedding, Victoria and Judge Crawford had extended their business trip to Denver indefinitely, eventually selling their house in town. The judge had accepted a position with a Denver law firm, and most in Redemption Creek had breathed a sigh of relief at their permanent departure. "Returning permanently?" Mariah asked. Elizabeth shook her head. "Just visiting, according to Agnes. Apparently her niece Eliza is getting married next month." "Eliza?" Owen looked surprised. "I hadn't heard she was courting anyone." "Dr. Whitaker," Elizabeth supplied with a knowing smile. "Quite the romance, from what Agnes says. Started when she was helping with his correspondence and blossomed from there. The wedding's set for August, and Victoria couldn't very well miss her niece's marriage, despite the awkwardness." Mariah smiled, genuinely pleased for the young woman who had shown such character in standing against her aunt's schemes. "Dr. Whitaker is a good man. They'll suit well." "Agnes said Eliza specifically requested your presence at the wedding," Elizabeth continued. "Both of you. She said it wouldn't feel right without you there." Owen looked to Mariah, concern in his eyes. "You'll be very near your time by then. Are you sure you want to attend?" "If the doctor says it's safe, I'd like to go," Mariah replied. "Eliza deserves our support after she showed such courage last year." Owen nodded, trusting her judgment as he always did. "Then we'll plan on it, health permitting." Later that evening, after Elizabeth had departed and they'd enjoyed a quiet supper, Mariah and Owen sat together on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of orange and purple. Owen's arm was around her shoulders, his free hand resting gently on her belly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "Victoria Crawford," Mariah admitted, "and how different things might have been if she'd succeeded in her schemes." Owen tightened his arm around her. She didn't succeed because what we have is stronger than her lies. The truth has a way of prevailing given time. It does, Mariah agreed, though sometimes it needs a champion. She turned to look at him, her eyes soft with memory and love. Someone willing to stand up and say, "Her honor stands with me." Owen smiled, remembering that pivotal moment when he had declared his faith in her before the entire town. "I meant every word then, and I mean them even more now. I know." Mariah leaned her head against his shoulder. "That's why I never worry about the future, no matter what challenges it might hold, because we face them together." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Mariah felt the baby move again, a gentle rolling that seemed almost like agreement. Their child would be born into a home filled with love and mutual respect, taught by example that standing for truth and supporting one another were the foundations of both a good marriage and a good life. Victoria Crawford and her schemes were part of their past, now an obstacle overcome, a test that had ultimately strengthened their bond. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility, a future they would build together, day by day, year by year. "I love you, Mrs. Daniels," Owen said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And I love you, Mr. Daniels," Mariah replied. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days after." In the gathering dusk, they sat together, husband and wife, soon to be parents, their lives intertwined in ways neither could have imagined when they first met on that fateful day in Redemption Creek. And in that moment, with the ranch quiet around them and the vast Wyoming sky overhead, they were exactly where they were meant to be, with exactly who they were meant to be, with a truth no lie could ever change.